Britney Spears is by no means the only A-lister to have suffered the price of fame.
Think of Whitney Houston or George Michael, and you think all of that money, all of that prestige, all of that power cannot protect you from the kind of ills of life.
And it's not just the world's A-list affected.
His death appears to be another tragic reminder that instant fame and celebrity can also come with a terrible burden.
Well, we all have psychological problems, of course, in our everyday life. There are stresses in our everyday life. But when most of us have a problem, we just go away and do it privately. But if you're a celebrity, you don't have that space or time. You're going to be doing all of this sorting out in the public eye.
I love you guys.
And it was the paparazzi who were making sure every move of stars like Britney were being documented for the world to see. On the front line was Dano Ramos.
I was actually doing a documentary on paparazzis. One guy that I was following was Roberto. Roberto would always call me, and he'll be like, I'm on Britney, exclusive. And when you hear the word exclusive, that was big time money for him. It was big time money for the whole team.
Since becoming a superstar at 16, Britney was used to having all eyes on her. But her perfect princess of pop model began to fall apart when she eloped to get married in 2004.
The marriage in Vegas to Jason Alexander did not surprise me at all.
It's interesting that she married her childhood friend. In almost a way, she's trying to recapture her youth. Like, this was a time when I felt safe. This is a time when people that I knew cared for me because I was me and not because I was Britney Spears.
That was the beginning of the rebellion that we started to see, and the stuff that was taking her away from the script, which had been carefully prepared for her as a famous person.
Thanks to everything being caught on camera, it wasn't long before news of the nuptials spread.
Within minutes of her getting married, her agents, her managers, her lawyers descended upon Las Vegas, and they reminded Britney Spears that she was not a person, she was a multi-million-dollar business.
The more that people keep swooping in to make decisions for her once again, the more she feels inefficacious as a human being. Like, she can't do anything right. She always has to be told what to do, and that really messes with your self-esteem.
The marriage was annulled 2 days later. But with many saying she just wanted the normality of marriage and children, 8 months later, Britney was married again. This time to backing dancer Kevin Federline.
The whole story is the timing from when, I was on tour and our relationship evolving until we got married, basically.
The couple started dating while Kevin's ex-girlfriend was pregnant with their second child. Within 2 years, Britney was pregnant with her second child by Kevin. But reportedly, because of his partying habits, the happiness soon turned sour.
Britney was desperate for love. From the earliest age, Britney wanted everybody to love her, including Kevin. And I think that when it didn't work out, it was heartbreaking for her, and I don't think she ever really dealt with it.
All of us have been through up and downs in relationships. All of us have had bad breakups, but not all of us have had to do it in front of the world.
The moment that I started to become really concerned for Britney Spears was when she had that now infamous sit down and crying the ugly cry.
What's up, Britney?
Please go away.
Out, everyone get out. Out, out, out.
I think when she cried to the paps, I think there was two things going on here. I think we could read exactly what kind of strain she was under at this point. But of course, the paps, the ones who were following her all the time, were in some sense, I don't want to say the people closest to her. These were people who she was interacting with on a fairly regular basis. So I suppose there is that notion of the signal to people who are at least with her to say, look, this is the stress I'm under at this point in time.
Do you need someone to talk to, Britney?
I think we've come a long way in kind of spotting the signs of poor mental health. Thank goodness we speak about it more. For poor Britney back then, what she really needed was someone to kind of get her to see that what was going on was a product of her not being able to cope properly.
You okay, Britney?
Are you okay, Britney?
You should go home, Britney.
Do you need to talk to someone, Britney?
Adding to the strain of Britney's mental health was being a mum in full public view.
I think a lot of mothers feel guilty when they're developing their career, and I think there's always this conflict between career and children. Now, also, of course, if you're a star, you're very good at what you do. does that put the pressure on to say, well, I should also be an extraordinary mother?
We were all playing judge and jury, thanks to the photos constantly appearing around the world.
It's a multi-billion industry when it comes to getting photos. These paparazzis are just gonna do what they gotta do to make their living.
It was a bit of a madhouse and a little bit, frightening, to be honest.
I don't care, man.
Bad stories sell, and she had kind of become the poster child, I think, at that point of, they saw that fall and they all kind of saw the blood in the water and they went after her with a vengeance.
Britney Spears was a moneymaker for the paparazzi. They couldn't get enough pictures of her, and the pictures sold all around the world and made them a ton of money.
And the pictures they got would not be favourable for Britney. Moments such as driving off with 4-month-old Sean Preston on her lap and stumbling with him in her arms meant everyone had an opinion.
She's in this fishbowl, trying to be this parent, a perfect parent, in the same way she'd try to be the perfect performer, and it's just not possible.
And when Sean Preston accidentally fell from his high chair under the care of the nanny and banged his head, things escalated, and doctors called family care monitoring services.
We were contacted by Kevin Federline's attorneys, stating that Britney needed a monitor. I was with her for about 4 months. Monitored parents generally, they try to be on their best behavior, but then something happens and they take over their normal way that they act and interact with their children sort of takes over. I know that there were times when she was frustrated, mostly because of having somebody observing her, but Britney was really good with her children.
The level of fame and the amount of attention Britney had is hard for many of us to comprehend. Could her fellow 90s teen pop sensations understand what she was going through?
She went from obviously the Disney Club with Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, these 3 amazing artists, and all of a sudden they're so famous that they can't even walk down the street. And being a solo artist can be quite lonely. I wouldn't change being in a band because you always have each other. Even like now talking to you, I just feel like we're the other lads. Do you know what I mean?
The image pop stars give is perfection, so I guess that's always going to be a struggle for girls.
Don't forget, this was, back in the 90s, it was all the lad culture. You got to remember all the magazines that were out back then. We had Nuts, we had Loaded. It was very much this culture of, a woman being valued uniformly for her desirability.
It is harder to trust people. It can destroy you. It really can.
The thing with fame, right, is this. I found it fun for 6 months. It's like, oh, I can't go to a shopping mall and it's like full on all the time and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, hang on a minute. I can't go to a shopping mall. I can't go to a restaurant. I can't go anywhere. I want to be able to go to work and have that and then be able to sort of have an off switch, but there isn't an off switch.
I think she is slightly cut off to, like, normality. I think when you sit there one-on-one with her is when you realise that she is, she's a home girl, and she just loves a bit of normality.
For Britney, normality was not an option, and with the world watching, she was about to face her breaking point. The opening chords of Baby One More Time, which was released over 20 years ago, transformed a 16-year-old girl from Kentwood, Louisiana, into one of modern music's most influential players. Britney Spears launched millennial teen pop, mixing family-friendly girl-next-door fun with good old-fashioned controversy.
You have to remember, this was a decade ago. This was not today. We'd not seen Kim Kardashian's sex tape. We'd not seen Paris Hilton's vagina. This was innocent times in America and maybe the world.
It was a virgin whore kind of mentality, and it absolutely captured the interest and fascination of the world.
Fascination that would lead to an insatiable public appetite to watch every move she made.
If you're going to blame anybody, blame everyone. Blame everyone across the board. Blame the person that's buying the magazine at the rack at the store. You know, the photographer. Blame the security guard. He's the one that told us where you were going.
You got to remember, when you have that level of fame, you know, the people that are around you many times aren't there for you. They're there because they're paid to be there, or they're there because they have a vested interest.
Britney's mental well-being was starting to be analysed on a global scale. And in November 2006, during a momentous 14-month period, her relationship with Kevin Federline was about to end for good.
It's kind of interesting to see how we fell in love, got in fights, everything, you know, it's just kind of there.
I don't know how much fights it shows.
Well, it doesn't show all the fights, but you can feel the tension. Like, it's cool. It's different.
Back up, guys.
2 months after the birth of their second son, Jaden James, Britney filed for divorce from Kevin, citing irreconcilable differences.
Divorce is a lot harder than people think. And even if it's something that's welcome, it's a change of identity, it's a change of your kind of day-to-day. If kids are involved, it's a huge change to kind of those constants in your life. I mean, everything changes.
And most of the time people are suffering this in private. They're already embarrassed, they're barely telling their families and friends, and they're processing that on their own. For Britney, not only does she have to deal with all those emotions, she had to also deal with her publicist saying we need to release a statement that, you know, the divorce has been filed. It's almost like you can't be genuine with your own emotions. Constantly you're thinking about, how do I change the narrative? What should I appear like? So much that you end up losing sight of who you are.
When people aren't experiencing the best of mental health, I think a number of things can change. The way they think about situations, their mood states and their emotions, their behaviour, so everything can change.
Britney's big change in response to her impending divorce was to start living a very public party lifestyle, which meant every single move was put under the microscope as she chose to hang around with a very A-list party set.
Britney was at her lowest point when Paris Hilton recognized that fact, and she invited her to go out clubbing with her. And then they'd party at Paris's house all night long after the clubs closed.
Some people can handle their party. Britney could never handle her party. It affected her health, it affected her work. In 2007, we saw the infamous, awful Britney VMAs performance.
She was pushed again and again to perform almost like a trained monkey. She was absolutely not in the right headspace to be out on stage. And she was forced because she was the gravy train to a bunch of people that she had been supporting since she was very, very young.
Life came to a standstill on the 21st of January 2007. The death of Britney's aunt stopped the partying and had a huge effect on her state of mind.
She lost yet another person she thought she could trust. And I think it must have been really confusing for her because all her life, she doesn't know who to trust.
Psychology has taught us that emotional disclosure is critical for good mental health. Now, if you're a celebrity, who can you really trust to talk to? That somehow the story isn't going to find its way into the tabloids or into celebrity magazines.
Do you think that you just need a moment to yourself and to be close with your community, to be close with other people who probably knew this person and loved them, and to spend time with the people who truly care about you?
And on the one hand, you want to help, but if the help is offered and you're told you're being ridiculous, I'm fine, and there's other people saying that it's fine, it's, you know, there's kind of this sort of collective that, okay, well, let's just all agree we don't see it, and it's not said like that. But if no one calls it out, or if someone calls it out and it's shut down, then people just kind of tend to play along.
So,
Britney's life was spiraling out of control for all the world to see, and she wasn't coping well.
I think for anybody, when you are the risk of losing your children, you've had a death in the family with her aunt Sandra Covington, who she was dearly close to, and at the same time you're going through a divorce. I think most people would struggle with those life events all coming at you at once. Now magnify that with the scrutiny of fame, and you can start to understand the kind of turmoil and pressure that Britney Spears is under.
In February 2007, the people around Britney seemed to realize she needed help.
Part of the reason Britney went to rehab was to just get her out of this world. And the easiest and the quickest way of doing that was to send her to rehab.
Getting her far away from LA was the first step. And it was the Crossroads Center in Antigua, set up by rock legend Eric Clapton, that was chosen as her place to escape.
You either want to go to rehab on your own volition, or you don't. And I think Britney felt kind of forced into rehab, and I think it went inevitably the way it was always going to go, which is Britney having no patience for it, not wanting to be there, and checking out.
After spending only 24 hours in the clinic, Britney did check herself out.
Britney, at this time in her life, is not thinking straight. Britney is in chaos, she's in turmoil, and she's in massive anxiety. And what you see, what we all see, sadly, is Britney acting out, lashing out, rebelling, losing control.
No, don't worry. Okay.
Britney flew straight back to America and headed directly to Kevin's house with one thing on her mind: her children.
The point about rehab is, apart from anything else, it might give you time to think and reflect on what's important in life. And as a young mother, what you might value most is your children. And you might have this burning desire to see them.
And yet public interest was at fever pitch, and the paparazzi were on her tail.
The paparazzi were killing her, but she was addicted to them.
I'm not lying. They were about 70 paps.
As the number of paparazzi grew rapidly, Britney's erratic behavior was quickly escalating.
We knew that she was going to stop by either to see the kids or even to see Federline. When she did arrive here, that was a spectacle because of the fact that she came in, viciously, vigorously tried to see the children by pounding on the door, and nobody would answer. That, you could tell, was frustrating her.
She was just very impulsive, and there was no one there to stop her. She didn't have her friend to say, hey, Britney, let's go home and call him up. No, she was all by herself.
Is she going to go home? Is she going to try to find the kids? Is she going to go on a little drive around town? We never knew. We just had to follow her.
Britney got back in the car and, knowing she was being watched, headed for the valley over the other side of the Hollywood Hills.
And what she did is she pulled around here and parked approximately here.
Thanks, Britney, for coming out.
She walked into the establishment.
We were cleaning up, and there was a bunch of flashing outside lights. I thought they were going to kill each other. They were trying to pile up on top of each other to try and get a picture. And somebody knocked on the door saying, hey, open the door, Britney Spears wants to come in. And they proceeded to come in. She sat in my chair. I said, what's up? Can I help you? She said, I want to shave my hair off. I said, no, you don't. She said, oh, yes, I do.
This life, this turmoil that she was going through, and it was a rash, irrational act born out of anxiety and the chaos and the concern of the custody battle and the divorce that she was going through. And it was almost like a shedding of identity.
She had 2 bodyguards, supposedly keeping an eye out to make sure the paparazzi were not getting any pictures.
I wouldn't be at all surprised if people around Britney were not getting a kickback. They were allowing the paparazzi to take her pictures.
What happened to the hair? He's gone on the floor, huh? Come on.
By the time I came back to her, I realized she went into that other room, sat in that chair, and buzzed half her hair off.
That photographer and that agency is going to make a tremendous amount of money, over hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not maybe well into the millions.
The danger of a paparazzi photograph, one snap, one frame, is that it shows you the surface of things without getting to the depths of it. And you see a picture of Britney almost looking wide-eyed as if she's enjoying shaving her head. But behind that elation, which came very quickly afterwards, was the sadness of, what the hell have I done?
The public, all they were interested in doing was viewing that spectacle of the head shaving, instead of pausing to think about mental health in a more serious way.
She said, my mom's gonna be pissed.
Again, it's sort of that return to innocence, you know, going back to rely on the mom. My mom is my safety, you know, and that's probably why in a moment of extreme emergency for Britney, that the only person she really cared about at the moment was her mother.
So I tried to change the subject and talk about her kid and you know, get her out of whatever mode she was in, because obviously she was convinced to do this that night. I couldn't convince her. I thought we could do a comb over maybe, you know, and fix it, but the minute she left, I said, holy shit, lock the doors. We locked the doors. I actually grabbed the hair and we left because I had this weird feeling someone was gonna break in here.
This erratic and out-of-character behavior was making headlines around the world. So why was she doing it?
I think really it was an expression at the time of just she's had it, you know, the things that were part of her superstar power, her hair, you know, her trademark look. She just didn't want anything to do with it anymore. I think she was tired, and I do think that it was a cry for help at that time.
These days we have social media, so this idea of being hyper-exposed is something we can all kind of understand a little bit. Amplify that 1,000,000 times, and at a time when not everyone can understand it, it feels so confining. The idea of having each and every one of your steps viewed and analyzed and discussed and criticized.
Hi, Britney.
After spending just 40 minutes in Esther's, Britney, with the hoodie pulled over her head, left the salon with her bodyguards and gave the waiting crowd an explanation.
Why'd you cut your hair like that, Britney? Stay left, please. Just keep moving. Keep moving.
As somebody who works with the paparazzi, it's so tough because your job is dependent on getting the most salacious and the most sensational material. And oftentimes you know that when you publish that, you might destroy somebody's life.
We knew the world was about to see something, but we were experiencing it firsthand. Sure, we got the photos, sure, we got the videos, you know, we've had all this, but now what do we do? What's gonna happen to her now?
Britney Spears was just 8 years old when she traveled by train with her mom to New York to meet the woman who would propel her to megastardom.
They were not a well-to-do family. They had very little money at the time. It was a big adventure for them to come to New York.
Nancy was very excited about Britney. Nancy really believed in her voice and her style and her personality and her look.
They asked me to fly to Orlando and meet all these kids who were auditioning for the Mickey Mouse Club. And she was one of the 35 finalists that they had to pick 7 kids out of to add to the already existing cast. Christina Aguilera, need I say more? She had the most amazing voice. Justin Timberlake and Ryan Gosling. Whatever happened to him?
She was polite. She was yes ma'am, no ma'am, the very Southern way of speaking, and didn't say much else unless you asked her. But once she started to perform, it was like you turned a key and she just lit up. She just owned the room at that point.
My comments were very simple. Very good kid, extremely nice, signer.
If you think of Britney Spears, you've got this young, conservative, innocent, shy, timid girl plucked from that kind of obscurity into fame, where she is put through this machine, packaged, the commercial doll, all singing, all dancing, all popular. That's why I call her the Princess of Pop, because she was transformed. But she was transformed on the outside without the inside changing very much at all.
Young children, they're usually focusing on just learning what the world is about, going to school, developing relationships, working on their social skills. They're not really supposed to be tasked with all of this responsibility, adult responsibilities, financial responsibilities, having to be in multiple places, having your life be scrutinized by the public. And I think it really kind of robs people of their childhood.
So ultimately you have to ask, like, was it worth it? And where would Britney be if she hadn't become Britney Spears?
She certainly wouldn't have been here 18 years later, in the eye of a media storm. Following on from shaving her hair, Britney's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. Next stop was Body and Soul Tattoo Studio.
It was a pretty slow night, just like every other. And I remember hearing this insane roaring sound outside that was coming from seeming far away. And it got closer and closer. And I didn't know what it was. I wasn't sure what was happening, if there was a riot outside. And then the flashes came. The door opened slowly, and a hooded figure walked in the door. I still didn't know who it was, what was happening. It was all happened so quickly. And then I realized it was Britney Spears. The first tattoo that she got was lips that someone else's girlfriend had done so that her boyfriend could get those lips tattooed. So she's walking around with someone else's girlfriend's lips tattooed on her, and I'm sure that person has no idea. And the other one was a small cross. Immediately after that, I noticed that her hair was gone. But I remember asking her, why'd you shave your head? And her answer was a bit weird. It was, you know, I just don't want anybody touching my head. I don't want anyone touching my hair. I'm sick of people touching my hair.
One could argue that, you know, we're all beholden to the characters that we create. Obviously, the more famous we are, everyone else holds us to that.
And there was never a sense of stillness or time alone for Britney to be an ordinary girl, to know who she was and to identify with who she was. And so outside of the performance mode, who's Britney? And I don't even think Britney knows the answer to that question.
I felt like the people around her were sort of just as disengaged with what was happening around them as she was. It just didn't seem like they cared very much. I felt this insane sense of anxiety and energy that felt so negative. It just seemed like everybody was waiting for the crash to happen.
And I think that's part of this complex relationship between us, the public, and the celebrity, which we need to understand more fully if we're ever going to understand why we put celebrities through the things that we do put them through.
An hour and a half after entering the tattoo parlor, Britney was put into a waiting car, her head once again covered, and driven off.
Back up, back up, back up, back up.
Leaving her house around noon on the following day, Britney was on the road again and about to display more disturbing behavior.
Around the same time that Britney was going on her daily drives, she also started to not only wear different colored wigs, but also speak in different accents.
Please stop it. Leave me alone.
Once again, I was very alarmed.
At this point, she's no longer Britney Spears. We don't know who she is, but she's not Britney Spears. Or maybe this really is the truth. Maybe this is the true Britney, and the girl that we thought we knew was a big lie. It's a big question.
I think in a lot of ways, you know, it was clear that what she was doing, you know, that she wasn't making great decisions. I think the fact that she did them publicly was almost kind of, you know, sort of two fingers up to the paparazzi, like, you made me do this. You know, I feel that no matter what I do, I can't do anything right anyway, so here you go. It's almost like this self-fulfilling prophecy going on.
Right now, we're on Sunset Boulevard at the Mondrian Hotel, right behind me, as you can see. This is where Britney would come. She'll go to a lot of hotels, but this particular one was a special one.
She shows up at a hotel with, I think, a piece of paper with some credit card numbers, so no way of paying.
Doesn't she have a pool at home? Like, literally, why is she going to the Four Seasons or the Mondrian, all of these Beverly Hills hotels, to swim in their pool? Why doesn't she have cash? Why doesn't she have her own credit cards? Here she was earning millions and millions of dollars for family members, for management, for her publicity team. She doesn't have a wallet.
She then wants to go swimming, can't buy a bathing suit, you know, decides to go down to her bra and underwear. Again, you know, this is an international pop star. You know, there would have been people with cameras there.
She started shaving her legs at the pool. No one could believe it.
You would think that they would kick her out. No, she was still Britney Spears.
She's a big star with a lot of money. How can you tell her what to do, a stranger? I think a lot of people felt terrible for her, but they didn't know where to begin. They didn't know who to call.
Another aspect of celebrity is they're protected from all that useful feedback which the rest of us rely on to get us through life in a reasonably balanced manner.
In a pre-social media era, it was in fact the Paps and their pictures that were the only things keeping Britney's parents and management aware of what she was doing.
So during this time, because there was no social media, there was no Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, we were the ones that were leaking out all the information to the news, and this is where her father, her mother were finding out what is going on with our daughter.
On the one hand, she was this megastar. She was everybody's meal ticket. She was making millions and millions of dollars, yet people were basically saying, you can't make a decision for yourself. And the minute we leave you alone, this is what you do. Now we're going to have to put tighter controls around you.
Following another short-lived visit to rehab, 4 days after her odd behavior at the hotel, Britney was back at Kevin's house, demanding to see her children.
Britney went and said, open the door, and the door didn't open. And you could actually hear Kevin, I'm not letting you in, Britney, I'm not letting you in. But we could actually hear it through the intercom. She got frustrated and they just pulled back out.
Publicly humiliated again, Britney, alongside her cousin Allie Sims, drove off.
But we didn't really know what she was gonna do, where she was gonna go.
Eventually, Britney and Allie, who was driving, pulled into a local garage, with only Dano and photographer Roberto in tow.
So they drove to Jiffy Lube, and I'm thinking that she wanted to use the restroom. And that's where I would ask her questions about what's going on. Why did you shave your hair? And some of the questions, because we're on it exclusively. And so this was a big-time money shot for Roberto's stills camera, and it was money shot for my video. And Britney was about to come out of her car as I approached her with the video camera. And Allie approaches my camera and grabs my camera and puts it down and said, guys, please don't. This is not good.
No, guys, please, guys, don't do this.
Britney reached in the back of her seat of that Mercedes and grabbed this umbrella, and this is the actual umbrella that she grabbed, and she went after us and attacked my truck.
She just starts digging in.
And we've all found ourselves under periods of extreme stress where our behaviour isn't entirely rational. And I think what's different between the rest of us and a celebrity really is that when we have our little outbursts or we do something irrational, nobody ever notices.
As she was with her teeth grinding and just beating my truck up, and then she started going after Roberto. He turns his back and she swipes him in the back with the umbrella.
It's a double-edged sword. You know, the press needs the artist needs the press. So it's a symbiotic relationship, but it got a bit vicious.
Oh wow, she did that too? This?
Britney did what I think most human beings would do when something just becomes crowded and claustrophobic. You lash out. And what was in her hand at that time was an umbrella. And she was lashing out not just at the paparazzi, but at the press and at fame and who she had become and the life that she could never get back.
Never before had the paparazzi been attacked by Britney, but having been relentlessly pursued for the past year, she finally snapped.
The way I see it now is that she was crying for help. And this was her vent, that she went and attacked my truck with the SUV just to ask for that help, to say, I'm not good.
It sounded like she was having alcohol and substance issues, and that perhaps she was experiencing mental health symptoms, including depression. And, you know, when you mix those two things, people do become at higher risk for things like self-harm and suicidal ideation. I think people were so used to seeing her sort of being functional in a public environment that perhaps they didn't think it could happen to her, but it could happen to anybody.
With Britney at rock bottom, even she recognized the trouble she was in. Checking into Promises Rehab Center in Malibu, this time she stayed to complete her treatment.
It's not a little pill that you pop and everything's okay, right? That you need to change the way you think about things, your behaviors, your attitudes. All of these things matter.
After a month at the clinic, Britney came home.
All of us require time at certain points in our life to rethink and reevaluate and start trying to do things slightly differently. I think if you're a celebrity in the spotlight, you haven't got that latency period. You've got this pressure as soon as you come out. Britney came out, I think, to the same firestorm that she left before she went in.
Her relationship with the paparazzi had certainly become far more toxic.
I think it's interesting that one of Britney's role models was Princess Diana, somebody who also had a famous relationship with the paparazzi. And in the same way that Diana could never escape the paparazzi, Britney Spears can never escape the paparazzi.
Nowadays, there's a lot of conversations about mental health. But at the time of Britney Spears, honestly, we were reporting on it and we had no idea what was going on.
The court heard a motion brought by Kevin Federline today to formally extend the orders which the court had made on Monday with respect to custody, which you're aware of.
American courts do not take children away from their mother unless it's really serious.
At the start of October 2007, Britney's worst nightmare came true. Superior Court Judge Scott M. Gordon awarded Kevin Federline full custody of their sons after he said that Britney had a habitual, frequent and continuous use of controlled substances and alcohol. It seemed Britney had finally reached her breaking point.
She lost custody, she lost visits with the children that she still continued to love. People saw her as a disappointment.
Oh, she missed her kids so much that one day she went out and bought 2 baby blue parakeets and named them Sean and Jaden after her children. That's how sad she was. She just needed companionship.
If it wasn't for her superstardom, then she's supposed to be a mother. And both of those two things that probably fed very strongly into her self-concept were taken away from her.
That's the one thing that people misunderstand about Britney Spears. Britney Spears copes with life by going into performance mode. It's how she knows who she is, it's how she deals with who she is, and it's how she keeps going and finds a sense of identity. Britney's crisis back then was not knowing who she was. So coming out of performance mode and into Britney, the private person mode, left her lost, confused, disoriented, and I think led to a crisis of identity.
What's up, Britney?
Please go away.
Everyone get out. Out.
Whether or not Britney was actively encouraging it, it was killing her. The world scrutiny, the world attention, the fame, it was killing her.
Right now, we're on top of Hollywood Hills, which is next to Beverly Hills on Mulholland. And so this is where Britney Spears was residing at that time. But in this particular night, this is where it was just mayhem. Reporters, paparazzis, you name it, police cars, fire trucks, ambulance.
Following a court-appointed visit, Britney locked herself in a bathroom for 3 hours, refusing to give back the children to Kevin.
The visit went well up until that moment in time when she had to return her sons. I believe she had gotten a phone call telling her something to the effect of, you know, you need to return the kids, and, you know, I don't know what the rest of it was, but I know whatever it was, it triggered her to be extremely upset.
We have good mental health. We take care of our future selves, not just our current selves. In that moment, the need to have her kids was so deep. You know, she wanted to take care of what she felt in that, you know, in those moments, that she couldn't project forward into, well, what's it gonna mean? Like, how long are we gonna stay in this bathroom? You know, what happens when this door opens? You know, is a judge gonna look favorably on this?
What's going on with Britney? She doesn't want to give the babies back?
Kevin Federline's attorney was one visitor who tried to coax her out.
What's going on, man? Give me a break, okay? Come on, man. What's going on?
Yeah, what's going on?
After spending hours locked in the bathroom, Britney was put into an ambulance and ventured out to the waiting eyes of the world.
The minute the gate opened, the ambulance came out with this lights. All the paparazzis and everyone just surrounded the ambulance.
I remember I was working on a live cable news program when that happened, and we were watching the footage live in the studio. You know, we're seeing the trucks come in, ambulances at her house, and she came out on a stretcher.
And they were even trying to get pictures of Britney in the back seat in a gurney.
In retrospect, it looks like kind of bear bidding or someone in the stocks or someone in an asylum. It's just not for viewing pleasure.
It was so clear that this girl had been calling out and crying for help in so many ways, and just never really got what she needed. The great people, I suppose, who intervened and who managed to extricate her from that bathroom and get her some help in a hospital did a tremendous job.
Britney was reportedly placed under a 5250 psychiatric hold at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. This allows a qualified doctor to involuntarily confine a person deemed to have certain mental health disorders for up to 14 days.
Do I remember? Yes, I remember. I cried. I just was so glad when her parents stepped in and did what they did, and they did exactly what they should do as parents. Yes, I cried. I loved this little girl, and I knew she was in pain, and it broke my heart.
Although critics say they should have acted sooner, it was her dad stepping in and taking back control of Britney's life that many say saved her life.
A conservatorship agreement in America is the same as being made a ward of court in Britain. And this essentially gives Britney Spears the same rights as a 12-year-old. She, basically in the early years of the conservatorship, had to seek permission to use the phone, get the car keys. Everything was under Jamie Spears' authority for the well-being of Britney Spears because she was deemed to be a danger to herself.
I do think that Britney kind of went back and redid her childhood when the conservatorship started, and she kind of did it the right way and learned things again. And I actually think that she felt safer.
It was her father. He really came in and kind of stabilized the whole situation. So I give her father really credit for really saving her, because if it was not for him, things could have turned out vastly different for her.
I think the public have changed, and I hope and trust that they wouldn't kind of enjoy watching it in quite the way they did then.
Britney Spears will always be Britney Spears. I just hope for her sake that she gets a chance to be whoever she wants to be.